morning, everyone. I would like first to thank Mr. Belogas and his team for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to discuss and share experiences on this hot topic, decarbonization, and in particular, EU ETS and its effect on the MRV. Just a quick note, as you may understand, it will be quite impossible to deeply cover this complex topic during this small amount of time, 12 minutes only. The European Commission and EMSA have already released 5 webinars on the same issue of more than 1 hour long each. Nevertheless, I will try to cover as much as possible during this time slot, and in case you have any questions or you want to explore more, I will be happy to answer through emails. So just a brief introduction of what we will cover today. So we will start with an introduction to the EU ETS and its timeline, application of the EU MRV, obligations by companies, as well as compliance cycle and exemptions. Before we start, let me say a couple of things, a brief background on who we are. My name is Andreas Philippou and I am the CEO of Dromon. Dromon has been established in 2003. We provide traditional classification services, having our own rules and regulations. We also provide statutory certification on behalf of 26 flag administrations. And since 2018, the entry date of the EU MRV, DBS has been among the first to be accredited as an EU MRV verifier, initially by UCAS and later on by the Hellenic accreditation body. Currently, we maintain both accreditations, and pursuant to that, we provide verifications of all greenhouse gas emission schemes, such as the EU MRV, UK MRV, IMO DCS, as well as a regional scheme in Sweden, the Clean Ship Index, that rewards ships' performance with economic incentives. A little bit the opposite of what the ETS is doing. A small introduction to the EU ETS. ETS stands for Emissions Trading System, and the system aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions. It was first introduced in 2005 with factories, stationary factories, and since 1st of January this year, it covers shipping. The rule applies to all EU member states and European Economic Area countries like Iceland and Norway. From 1st of January this year, as we all know, the EU ETS applies to cargo and passenger ships of 5,000 gross tonnage or more, and from 2027, offshore ships of the same size. The system is flag neutral, which means it applies to all vessels irrespective of flag. It covers emissions from voyages between and within the EU ports at 100% and between EU and non-EU ports at 50%. A phase-in surrendering of allowances begins in this year with 40%, increasing to 70% in 2025 and 100% from 2026 onwards. Initially, it covers carbon dioxide CO2 emissions, expanding to include methane and nitrous oxide from 2026. And this is, let's move to timing and scope. It's a table which summarizes the application of both EU ETS and MRV on types and on different types and sizes of ships, greenhouse gases, and phase-in period, as we mentioned before. Moving on to responsibility of compliance for the EU ETS. The compliance responsibility lies with the shipping company, and as such, which can be either the ship owner or the ISM company, means the DOC holder. Both parties must agree on the transfer of responsibility under the ISM code and document it accordingly. Each shipping company is required to open a maritime operator holding account, MOHA, with the administering authority in their jurisdiction. The European Commission has issued a list of shipping companies indicating where each must open its MOHA account, based on registration, location, and port of calls over the past 4 years. In case your company is not listed, there is a clear procedure to be followed to ascertain the administrating authority. In terms of the MRV scope of application, I'm pretty sure that most of us are already familiar with this scheme since it entered into force in 2008. So the EU MRV applies to cargo and passenger ships of 5,000 gross tonnage and above. And from next year, the regulation will be extended to include cargo ships and passenger ships from 400 to 5,000, as well as offshore ships of 400 gross tonnage and above. The European Commission has not yet decided if this type of ships, the smaller ships, will enter to the EU ETS system, and they will review it at a later stage. Until 2023, the regulation covered only carbon dioxide, as we said before, the CO2 emissions, but from this year onwards, it will include methane and nitrous oxide emissions. Next, compliance obligations from a shipping company perspective. So the first step is to assign a company an MRV and ETS responsibility to a shipping company. Same entity should be responsible for both schemes, and we cannot separate the responsibility. Step 2, the company responsible should revise the monitoring plan according to the new regulations and submit it to the verifier through Thetis MRV for assessment. Then the responsible entity shall request the opening of a MOHA account with the administering authority. And actually the deadline was 1st of April, which means yesterday. So you should have submitted the assessed monitoring plan to your administering authority for approval. It's a gray area of what will happen for those that they didn't meet the deadline. And perhaps if we have somebody from Greek administration, they can answer the questions, because according to the European Commission, this is up to the member states to decide what penalties they will apply, if they will apply any penalties. So from 2025 and by 31st of March each year, which means this is next year, companies must submit their verified emission reports, which means report for each ship, as well as an aggregated emissions report at a company level. This is also something new. And finally, from 1st of January this year, companies must monitor and report methane and nitrous oxide emissions in addition to the CO2. And this is a quick outlook about the EU ETS compliance cycle. So the reporting period starts in 1st of January each year and ends 31st of December each year, so it's a calendar year. By 31st of March, as we previously mentioned, companies must prepare and submit emissions reports for the previous year, both at the ship and the company level. And end of September, companies need to surrender their emission allowances for the previous year. Purchasing of emissions allowances can be done at any given time, but remember that by 30th of September of each year, you have to already purchase the emissions, the allowances, and surrender them. Regarding exemptions, and while every rule has its exemptions, EU ETS and MRV is of no exception. All ships' emissions are treated equally, except for the following that are valid until end of 2030. So a quick review about this. It's passenger ships between certain small island ports within the state member of less than 200k residents. Voyages between ports of outermost regions and ports within the same member state, public service obligations or contract voyages between two member states, and ice-class vessels can surrender 95% of their emissions regardless of sailing or not in ice conditions, most likely because they have bigger engines. And a few words, last but not least, how can we assist? As we said before, DBS is an accredited greenhouse gas emission verifier. We can provide verification of emissions reports at the ship and a company level, partial verification reports, which is something new in change of ownership, as well as on-demand verification, either on voyage, monthly, quarterly, etc. And that's it, my short presentation. Thank you for your attention. I hope this information provided herein was of your interest and will assist you to your compliance journey. Should you have any questions, I will be pleased to ask, and you can also email me through the emails shown in the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much.